It's the Rock and Roll Whiskey Show. Now here's your host, Mark Donner.
There are a lot of rock and roll Christmas albums and a lot of rock and roll Christmas songs. I haven't chosen any of those today. I've selected an album that is not strictly about Christmas. And this band actually even has a Christmas album, but I've chosen to go a little different way. It's an album I find myself listening to mostly in the wintertime, and it's often celebrated for its exploration of British folklore, nature, and countryside themes. It's got a natural, traditional feel to it. I don't quite know how to explain it, but it has a wintertime feel to me and a Christmas-time feel to me. The album, talking about Songs from the Wood by Jethro Tull from 1977, is not explicitly about Christmas. It encapsulates themes, though, of gathering, celebration, and reflecting on the year, all integral aspects of the holidays. The title track, Songs from the Wood, is imbued with imagery of the forest and nature, resonating with the Yule tradition of celebrating the winter solstice and the natural world. More directly, though, there are tracks like Ring Out Solstice Bells that directly tie in to winter holidays. The song's a celebration of the solstice, a key component of Yuletide festivities. The ringing of bells and the joyful rhythms make it a perfect match for the holiday season. Now, this album was the beginning of a few folk albums by Jethro Tull in the late 70s, and their folk era stands out as a unique and creative phase in their career, distinguished by the fusion of progressive rock, British folk, and just a lot of traditional music, in addition to the rock and roll that you get throughout the album as well. The contributions of, in particular, Ian Anderson and Martin Barre were central to this distinctive sound, showcasing their musical versatility and deepening the band's exploration of thematic and stylistic boundaries. The record is celebrated for its use of traditional instruments and sounds. Anderson, the frontman, primary songwriter, is most famous, and you've probably seen him standing on one leg playing his flute. His style is unique in the rock genre, and it's really a mix of folk, classical, and rock techniques. His songwriting during this period often drew on folklore, myth, pastoral themes, reflecting a deep fascination with British history and rural life. Martin Barre, the band's long-standing guitarist, was instrumental in shaping Tull's sound during this time particularly. His guitar playing, notable for its technical proficiency and versatility, was adept both with electric and acoustic styles. The songs in Songs from the Wood are filled with tales of woodland spirits and rural life that remind listeners of the storied past, festivals full of mystique and legend. Now again, it's not all about Christmas. In fact, probably none of it is, directly. Even Ring Out Solstice Bells is a winter solstice song. But the reverence for nature in songs like Jack in the Green and Velvet Green, I think, reflect celebrations that might evoke the winter solstice, where the shortest day of the year is honored and the return of the sun awaited. But it's not just nature. One of the more epic songs on this record, spanning 8.5 minutes, is Pibroch, Cap in Hand. Now, this song delves into the longing, sacrifice, and unrequited love. The song tells a poignant story that resonates on multiple levels, reflecting the band's ability to weave complex narratives into their music. It centers around a man who carries his dreams and love for someone, and the cap he holds in his hand, a symbol of vulnerability and openness. The imagery is powerful, depicting readiness to present his love to the person he desires. Yet, in the second verse, the man observes a candlelit table set for two and the presence of strange slippers and boots, suggesting that his love interest is probably involved with someone else. There's a lot of great music in here between the lyrics. The song's composition complements its lyrical depth, adding layers of emotion and complexity. The track's a testament to Tull's ability to craft songs that are musically intricate but rich in storytelling and depth. And even the title is fascinating because it references a specific style of Scottish bagpipe playing known as Pibroch. I'm probably pronouncing that very wrongly. This style, though, is characterized by extended, elaborate compositions that often convey a deep sense of tradition and history, and there's definitely a theme and variation structure to that music, from what I understand. Pibroch is considered a classical music form within the Scottish bagpipe tradition, and it's often associated with Highland culture, evoking images of Scottish countryside, battles, and ancient lore. Speaking of things that are Scottish and blended, let's get to our whiskey. When I say the name Famous Grouse, what comes to mind for you? For me, it's the little old lady who I watched hobble past me in the grocery store liquor aisle one day, like 15 years ago, reach down to the bottom shelf and sling a 1.75 liter bottle of Famous Grouse into her shopping cart. I was amused and a little impressed. My grandmothers didn't buy or drink scotch, so it was a novelty for me. And whenever I say Famous Grouse, that's what I think of. But I never really paid a lot of attention to the whiskey otherwise. It was a cheap bottle that didn't live up to the quote unquote quality of the single malts I was getting into at the time. But the thing I didn't understand about a blended scotch, even the inexpensive stuff, is oftentimes it's blended from pretty good whiskey that's distilled throughout Scotland and some of the most famous, well-known distilleries. The Scots take great pride in their blends, and you know what? They really should. It's now 2023, almost 2024, and blends are seeing a resurgence. We're seeing a lot of high-end blends that are sold as quality products alongside their single malt counterparts on liquor shelves. And case in point, Naked Malt Scotch whiskey. Now, this was formerly known as Naked Grouse up till a couple years ago, and it is a Famous Grouse expression that offers a distinct profile, and this blended malt scotch is matured in first fill Oloroso sherry casks, which gives it a fruity flavor that differs a little bit from a scotch that might be finished in a bourbon barrel, for instance. Now, many scotch blends bring together various malts and grain whiskeys from around Scotland. That's pretty common. Naked Malt is a unique whiskey because it's a blended malt whiskey, meaning that it only includes various single malts. Distilleries we know about in this blend are the Famous Grouse ones we know about, Macallan, Highland Park, etc. There are certainly others. Naked Malt has a 40% ABV or 80 proof, pretty typical of a blended scotch. The tasting experience of Naked Malt's characterized by a variety of notes. On the nose, it presents fresh cereal aromas combined with nuttiness and fruitiness due to the sherry finishing. The palate reveals that sherry influence more prominently, sharp citrus, berries, sugar, and spices. The finish is notable with citrus and some leather from the barrel influence and some cloves. You get that orange, you get peach, plum, banana, blackberry, apple. Then you get your holiday spices, cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, vanilla. There's a lot there, and it's a really, for the price, which is, I don't know, I think I paid $22, something like that. You can get it for under $25 most of the time around here. Pretty dang good. Definitely holds up to the other lower end Scotch blends that you'll find, at least here in the US. And that's why I feel like pairing Naked Malt with Songs from the Wood really creates a interesting juxtaposition, an interesting comparison. The album's traditional music and nature themes resonate well with the whiskey's rich, varied profile. A blend, if you will, of modern and classic influences. The whiskey's sherry influence, nutty and fruity notes complement the album's earthy and rustic tones. And the comparison between the traditional music and nature in Songs from the Wood and the process of Scotch whiskey distilling overall is quite interesting, as both art forms involve a complex blending of elements to create something harmonious and evocative. The process of making Scotch is deeply connected to the natural environment. The quality of the water, the climate for aging, and the local ingredients play a critical role. And it requires some creativity, which is another reason why I think it pairs with this music. The craftsmanship in Songs from the Wood lies in how the different musical pieces, the instruments, the folklore elements are woven together with rock and roll to create an engaging piece of art. Whiskey blending, there's the same kind of craftsmanship. Understanding the flavor profiles of various single malts and how they interact together. The master blender has to have a real good grasp of each component and a creative vision for the final product, just like a producer and a musician like Ian Anderson, for instance, would do with that record. Balancing flavors to achieve something new, something that's unique. Each one is a testament to the skill and creativity required to combine different components into a cohesive and enjoyable experience. And that's why I think I've paired those two together this week. Listen to Songs from the Wood. Pour yourself a dram of Naked Malt. Go out to the store and get it. It's like $20-25. You can't beat it, really. Now, if you're looking for more Tull, I did mention Jethro Tull from the early 2000s has a Christmas album. It's quite good. It's got a variation of ring out solstice bells on it. It's got a reworking of the song Fires of Midnight. And there's a lot of other interesting music on there, particularly if you are a Tull fan. Pretty good album, honestly. So I would recommend that one. And then I'd recommend Jethro Tull's latest album, which I've never actually heard pronounced, but I believe it's Rolkfloat, something like that. And it's inspired by Nordic mythology. You might find a little something on there that is kind of interesting for this time of year too. Happy holidays, everybody. This might be the last episode of 2023, unless I decide to get something going after Christmas. But have a Merry Christmas if you celebrate that. Have a happy holiday, whatever you celebrate. And I'll see you soon.
Another episode of the Rock and Roll Whiskey Show will be here soon. Be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, or whatever player you prefer. You can get show notes as well as tasting notes for the featured music and whiskey at rockandrollreclaimed.com. You can also get links to Mark's social media channels at the website. The Rock and Roll Whiskey Show is a production of Rock and Roll Reclaimed. Goodbye. Ring out the solstice bells. Happy holidays from the Rock and Roll Whiskey Show.